Resident Evil.
The point of a spin-off game is to take bits and pieces from the original product and remix them with some new ideas into something that you would not see out of a mainstay product. You can either take a franchise and put a new gameplay model into it, or take the story in a new direction. It's meant to bring new life into a franchise and possibly discover something new that the main creators can use for later entries. In the case of Operation Raccoon City, the only thing that was discovered was Slant Six's downward spiral into their eventual closing. This game really isn't deserving of my usual attempt at being objective before I start ripping into or praising the game for what elements it brought to the table as an attempt at entertainment. Operation Raccoon City was released in 2012, and unfortunately Slant Six fell into the trap that many of these sub-tier developers found themselves at the time when the cost of development skyrocketed compared to last gen, and investment was beginning to be hard found, thereby facilitating the creation of a lot of copycats. No one wanted new shooters anymore, cried analysts at the time. They only want to play the familiar Call of Duty, and so the 7th gen was drowning in the ocean that was the newly minted modern shooter genre. The only way that you would be able to coerce funding from an industrial source was to prove your game's potential to compete with the titans by dressing the game up as one of them, and unfortunately company after company folded or was bought out by the big dogs under the strain of needing success every time, which led to the AAA or indie market we have nowadays. Operation Raccoon City is so defunct of creativity that all copies of the game should be stacked outside the unemployment office. I don't want to make myself seem like I'm snubbing a bunch of people who ended up losing their jobs at the short-lived studio, because that's never a cool thing to do, but seriously, Slant Six, you are not doing yourselves any favors by delivering me a game that is basically a combination of Call of Duty, Gears of War, and Rainbow Six Siege wearing the pajamas of Resident Evil. One of the many games that all it's doing is playing copycat to whatever was popular at the time, and rather than giving us anything different from the developer's mind, all that effort goes into making a subpar experience lifted from another game that we could play instead. What else is there to say about the gameplay? This is why I almost never talk about the gameplay when I'm doing a first-person shooter, because there's nothing left to say. You point a gun with the left trigger, fire with right, and then move with the left control stick, and that never changes. Resident Evil Orc is a basic cover shooter. You run towards a box and then stick to it and end up playing shooting gallery with whoever is on the other side. I'm surprised that this game didn't have regenerating health and instead stuck to health bars like it's actually trying to be a legit Resi game, because the gameplay doesn't match up with health bars. I know that might make purists and Doom fans moan, but it really doesn't, because Operation Raccoon City is more action-oriented, where you are getting shot constantly and not moving. The number of bullets being leveled at you at any moment makes going for green herbs in this game a fool's errand unless you are in the middle of skirmishes, since the number of bullets you'll take on in the run to get a health item is sometimes equal to what the herb will actually give you, meaning that you might as well not have bothered. You can carry first aid kits in the game with you, but unless you are the medic, you get one kit maximum, which isn't helpful. If the herbs were carryable items in this game, then it could work, but not like how it is now. Even with the zombie additions which run around cover, regenerating health would still work better, because the amount of time it takes you to die under constant zombie attack would be the same, thereby making the zombies a threat to you since regenerating health doesn't happen constantly. Oddly enough, Operation Raccoon City is one of the few games in this franchise that remembered Crimson Zombies, and it works well for the game since they are incredibly unpredictable, fast, and aggressive, making them hard enemies to deal with in a third-person shooter, along with the Lickers, who come packaged with so much health and possum plays that you can never really tell if they're alive or not, which makes them a slightly scary enemy to deal with. Otherwise, outside of the typical Resi stuff, it's your basic Gears knockoff. Vague military force that you have to kill on the other side of the room, move up when finished, get your juice box on the completion screen. The Rainbow Six comparison comes up because Slant Six designed not only a cover-based shooter, but a class-based squad shooter as well. There are 5 characters to pick from, each with their own abilities to unlock. It doesn't cost all that much to do so, that are a part of this team, Wolfpack. I decided to play with 4 Eyes, the virologist of the team, which I'm pretty sure was one of the worst options available because her abilities are shit, committing the simple problem of making her best abilities end up being more complicated ways of killing things rather than just shooting them. Other than that, her only useful ability is giving me another slot for virus sprays. I didn't play with any other classes, but considering what I was seeing in combat with my 3 other characters and what they were bringing to the table, I am willing to admit that all the classes are badly conceived, similar to 4 Eyes. Slant Six was clearly aiming for this game to be built more on its multiplayer aspect, since they have insanely priced pistols in the upgrade menu that you have no way of achieving on one campaign run. And after playing that, why in the world would you want to grind it for the experience? However, the thing that makes this game different from the 6 games that it's copying the homework of is that this game is set in a non-canonical universe of Capcom's Resi franchise at the same time as Resident Evil 2. Like I said earlier, you are playing a member of Wolfpack, a part of the Umbrella security services sent in on top of their containment units to eliminate all survivors and data collected in the city. Umbrella apparently being unaware of the nuclear strike that's set to hit the city. But since this universe has the American Special Forces invading Raccoon City, I suppose the president, even in a Capcom game, is not going to strike down this many of his own men without evacuation. You get to go through all of the greatest hits of Resi 2, get to be involved in the shootout on William Birkin, help Hunk acquire the G-Virus, help repair Nemesis, ransack the hospital and clock tower, and ultimately get to kill Nikolai, Claire, and Leon Kennedy, dooming the world to further apocalypse. If you are asking, yes, I did decide to kill Leon, Claire, and Sherry, and that was mainly because I was trying to roleplay the situation, and unfortunately Slant Six didn't make Leon's mission sympathetic enough for me to believe that Wolfpack will be swayed by against their only chance at evacuation by Umbrella. Because Umbrella is Umbrella, halfway through their data scrubbing mission, their commander decides out of the blue to switch to a provisionary plan, and among those directives include the total cutting of ties with Wolfpack, effectively totally stabbing them in the back. If there's one thing that Slant Six didn't do right with developing this game, was that it made the Wolfpack character such a bunch of kill-happy, vicious sociopaths that they ended up having 0 personality among any of the poor bastards. I was literally playing as one. It was a part of 4 Eyes' character bio, which at the time I ironically thought would have made her one of the standouts by being a kill-happy robot. But no, it's just totally emotionless monotone the whole way down, given the few opportunities that she talks.
I'm bored. Let's find something to dissect.
You know, I remember back to B Company in the original Bad Company game, before EA ruined it in the sequel, and even though all the characters were walking cliche dumpsters, the voice acting and the script they were given made it campy, and therefore made it work because it was funny, whereas here, nobody gives a shit and everyone is wearing a mask, so there is no character to any of the guys on the squad. They might as well just be killjoys, which again, ironically, would have made them more interesting characters, since they would have to grapple with the age-old moral dilemma of fighting against their own programming. After Leon is shot in the head after a dull-as-hell boss fight, you get to ad-lib your own canon for what happened afterwards, since that's where the game ends. Not even a black screen text box saying how Umbrella picked them up or they got incinerated in a nuclear fireball. Just the fact that Leon is dead, no one survived, and Umbrella got away with their incompetent plan and zombie infestation. Operation Raccoon City, like Umbrella Chronicles, is a game that I struggle to find a reason why it exists. I suppose it was the premise that sold it to Capcom because, in all honesty, playing an Umbrella cleanup crew during some of the more plot-heavy entries in the series and getting to do things like fucking over important characters and moments has tons of potential, especially if some of that worthwhile effort from Resi's early days was brought over to the development. But unfortunately for this project, it was developed during the early days of the hyper-expensive console development, which drowned out creativity in favor of painstakingly and pointlessly market-researched horse crap, homogenizing any game that wasn't a blue-blooded attempt at innovating hard. Raccoon City is such a dreary and badly stewed mess of popular genres that it inevitably threw the good idea out the window to make space for it. Cover shooting mechanics that does nothing but slow the game down to full stops until the faceless enemies are gone, boring ass objectives seen a million times such as burning evidence or guarding doors, a bunch of classes that are all pretty much the same character being played by ridiculous accented actors who all sound the damn same and play the same way, a token upgrade system that gives you so much experience to make everything totally pointless, and a plotline that follows the same notes as Resident Evil 2 with none of the impact or any of the tension. I would suggest this game only to people who literally need an afternoon's fix of Resi delight or they'll die. But to those people, I would first suggest playing Resident Evil 2 or 3 again and getting a much better experience. Operation Raccoon City plays dress up as the big boys as an attempt to gain some of that popularity, but only ends up damning it to the ever-flowing bucket of forgetful software that the 7th generation has conjured. At this point, if you want to make a cover shooter, you need to bring something else to the table. It can be a new story, new characters, or a new spin on the gameplay idea, but we need to have something else, because if cover shooting's all you've got, then we've got another 7 games available to fill that role, and yours is just gonna fall into the white noise. I will conclude by putting up some scores for this waste of time, and wishing you all a victory for gamers. Hopefully, the zombie apocalypse will continue better off in the next game in the canon.